Well, this is a dream project in many ways. There's a couple of IPs I would tear my eye teeth out to work on, and this is one of them. We are huge fans of what's been done with the franchise beforehand, and to reach out and add to that in a meaningful way, I think is a great opportunity.
It's basically Batman's worst nightmare. We have 8 of the best assassins in the world who've come together to Gotham City for one night, Christmas Eve of all nights, right? To kill the Bat. He's gonna have to transition from this, rougher around the edges, less polished, younger Batman to the well-oiled machine that we know from Arkham City and Arkham Asylum. Because keep in mind, up until now, he's been dealing with the Maronis and the Falcones, the mob bosses and the petty criminals, and the assassins are just on a whole different level of difficulty.
He's used to winning at the start of our story. He's used to being the strongest guy in the room, the fastest guy in the room, and that changes tonight. So at some level, that's kind of crushing for his own ideas of himself, but it's also a great opportunity to learn and evolve and adapt. There's a level of emotion that comes to that, there's a level of character growth, and there's a level of mechanical growth for the character too. This guy makes mistakes. He makes mistakes, not necessarily all the time. He's not walking through doorways and trapping his cape in them, but he makes awesome mistakes, for example, by pushing things too far, for interrogating a suspect, but choking him during the interrogation, and he passes out. I think the real value of having this game set in the prequel territory is we know where things are going to end up. We've aimed to make our story very consistent with the other games and definitely add value to those characters. A writer I worked with before, he said that every time there's a crack in storytelling between what was this character like here and why was he like this over there, when you fill in that crack, it's a revelation for people. We have to be careful because there are some things we haven't told you which tie into the name. This is about the origin of key relationships and moments in Batman's life.
We're not telling the story of Batman's beginning. We're not telling the story of the beginning of Arkham Asylum. We're telling the story of the many various and important relationships that play out through the other 2 games. So we wanted to look at the Batman and Alfred relationship in a different way to make it more relatable. We set it in a way that Batman sees Alfred as this sort of extension of the darkest time, the darkest thing in his life. He sees Alfred as an extension of the death of his parents, because Alfred's been around since when his parents were around, and sort of as an overbearing parental figure. And Alfred, for his part, sees Batman as this spoiled kid who's squandering his parents' wealth on these nightly escapades. And the 2 of them clash. They clash often throughout our story. The character of the Penguin is someone that, he's an arms dealer. He's clearly, untrustworthy. He'd shoot you in the back as soon as he'd shake your hand. But at the same time, he has information that Batman needs. So Batman can't be too rough with him. He can't, knock him unconscious. He needs to figure out how to extract this information and get something useful from this very bad person. The game is really about sort of what you can get that you can use from everyone and everything in Gotham.
Christmas is going to be really fun because it adds a certain irony to everything. It's black on white. Gotham is the worst place in the world, right? It's this horrible black lung of a place. Then you've got Christmas, which is this wonderful warm image that we all have of being together with our family and having presents and eating together and generally rejoicing. And so it's kind of like this feeling of, happy birthday, you've got cancer. It's a good thing and a bad thing wrapped together, and but it keeps the sincerity, and the theme is there. It's not ridiculous, but it adds a level of black humor and I think emotional resonance and depth to all of our locations and all of the events taking place. The main inspiration for Arkham Origins is the comic book series Legends of the Dark Knight. It's a series that started in 1989 and followed in the wake of a big trend of going back in time to examine early career years. And I think it was started primarily from Batman Year One. Legends of the Dark Knight represented really important stories for the Batman mythology because every time Batman met someone or encountered some idea in the world, for example the Venom drug, it was the first time he'd ever run across it rather than the 80th time he'd run across it.
I'd add to that there are quite a few other comics that we read, and especially he mentioned Year One, which is seminal and really brought a lot to our story. I think we're also heavily inspired by what was done before in the previous 2 Arkham games, and we want to continue that great work, specifically building on a lot of the themes that they developed in the Arkham games. The theme of law versus justice being a big one, especially in Arkham City, where Batman is this character who doesn't follow the law. Every time he leaves the house, he's breaking the law because he's a vigilante, right? In our game, he has to decide whether he is going to actually follow and adhere to the law or break the rules and deliver justice to the people of Gotham.